Welcome. This is Compliance Counts, How to Stay Ahead of the Curve. Produced by Nation's Restaurant News, this program is being sponsored and presented by Harri. Harri is a human capital and workforce management technology platform that helps service-driven businesses build, manage, and engage their frontline teams. It integrates multiple functions, including talent attraction, applicant tracking, onboarding, scheduling, time and attendance, and workforce regulatory compliance, communications, and analytics. I'm Alan Liddle, and on behalf of NRN, I'll be your moderator for today's program featuring Dyer of Vida and Estilo Hospitality Group, Samantha Gallagher of Harri, and Jessica Napier of Pacific Catch. Let's handle some housekeeping before we hear from that knowledgeable trio. However, please note this presentation is being recorded for on-demand viewing. You'll receive an email with a link when that replay is available. If at any time you experience difficulties with audio or the slides do not advance, press the F5 key on a Windows system to refresh your webinar console. Use the Command and R key on an Apple device. If that fails, look to the help widget at the bottom of your screen or type your technical question into the Q&A area. That Q&A area is also where you can enter questions you might have about our topic. Type yours in at any time, and we'll get to as many as we can later. Next, let me share a few of our speakers' career notes. Jessica Napier is the Vice President of Human Resources at Pacific Catch, operator of 14 West Coast Fish House restaurants, where she's overseen workforce management since 2016. Her past positions included Human Resources Manager for retailer Macy's, Senior Director of Human Resources for the Boys and Girls Club of San Francisco, and Adjunct Professor for Business Management and Human Resources for the University of Phoenix. Samantha Gallagher is Product Manager for Compliance at Harri, where she develops workflows to capture information clients need to adhere to local, state, and federal workforce rules and regulations. Her previous post included Product Manager for Compliance at Electa, a radiation therapy technologies and services firm, and Senior Compliance Specialist at Allscripts, now known as Veradigm, a healthcare data systems and services company. Dyer is the Corporate Manager of Training and Talent Acquisition for Vida and Estilo Hospitality Group. V&E's portfolio in Miami and Las Vegas includes such brands as Cafe Americana, Havana 1957, Mercado de la Pescaria, and News Cafe. Formerly, among other roles, Ian was V&E's Corporate Beverage Manager, Bar Manager for Carlos and Charlie's at the Flamingo Hotel, and overseas team manager for Thomas Cook Travel. Well, with that, and that was a lot, I'm going to ask Samantha Gallagher to get us started. Samantha?
Thank you, Alan. As Alan mentioned, my name is Samantha Gallagher. I am a product manager leading the product compliance team at Harri. I will be hosting this webinar, Compliance Counts. The format of this webinar is I will be asking our panelists, Jessica and Ian, for their views on a few compliance questions. Before we start, I will ask Jessica and Ian to maybe provide a little bit more of an overview about their restaurants and their roles within those restaurants. So, Jessica?
Oh, thank you so much. So yeah, my name is Jessica Napier and I work for Pacific Catch. And Pacific Catch is an amazing organization. It's a West Coast fish house and we're obviously all in California today, but if you've had an opportunity to come in and see our 100% sustainable seafood is all we serve. And so it is a great place to eat and an amazing place to work. But obviously, you know, when you have lots of locations, as many of you I'm sure on this call have, you've got lots of people to figure out how to handle and help and support. And at Pacific Catch, we're all about growing our ohana and making the family feel.
Amazing. Thank you, Jessica. Ian?
Hi, Samantha. Yeah, for V&E Restaurant Group, we operate between Las Vegas and Miami. Majority of our business is down in Miami. We have about 24 restaurants there. We've got 3 over in Las Vegas, based out of Caesar's Palace, the Paris Hotel, and the Venetian. And soon we will have a 4th coming to the Flamingo. Lots of different brands, like Alan said before, Cafe Americano, Havana 1957, Paperfish Sushi, Cortadito Coffee. We've just taken on as well 2 new hotels, so we're expanding our portfolio, and more new restaurants will be coming soon. So really, really happy to be here and do this webinar with you.
Wonderful. All right. Well, let's get into it. So you both have employees in states that have been doubling down on compliance. Jessica, with you in California, obviously California is a high touch compliance state, and then Ian with you in Florida and Nevada. So with all of these compliance requirements, how do you stay up to date with the ever-changing regulatory landscape? Jessica, I'll let you go first.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Well, this is a very hard area. It is ever changing. And so because it changes all the time, it's you find yourself thinking, how am I going to stay on top of it? So one of the ways that we really have worked on trying to make sure we're always in the know is to make sure we allot time for it. And so it's really scheduling the time, because if you don't schedule the time, it could just pass you by. So scheduling the time, whether it's every week or once a month, on the calendar, to make sure you're reviewing and making sure you're up to date on everything, and find those really good periodicals. So there are some really good, whether it's your lawyer, whether it's a firm that you really feel is invested and really takes the time to give you a great overview, whether it's alerts from the states or local governments, whatever it is, you want to find that really reputable source, and get that to come to you, whether it's weekly, monthly, whatever it is, so that it keeps you sort of abreast of what's happening. That's one of the biggest tricks that I've found over the last couple of years, as it's become even more aggressive in the quickness that we're receiving changes. Yeah.
Do you have any sources that you typically rely on that you could share with us?
Well, obviously from an HR perspective, you have your STRMs, your all of those are really great. So those are great places to start. The other thing that I look at is local governments. At least in California, we definitely have state. We have the state issues. We have federal issues, which are a little easier to come by. But every single city here in California has their own regulations, and so really going to the source is what I do. So like we go right to the city and make sure we have that coming to us regularly, because those are the ones that'll get you. They change pretty quickly, and there's not as much. I would say advertisement or hoopla around the change. And so that would be my biggest trick right this second, is make sure you go to those small, city, or, look for the city ordinance, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Ian, how do you stay on top of the ever-changing regulatory landscape in Florida and Nevada?
Similar to what Jessica said, we're members of SHRM, and there's, conferences that we attend to see what our industry is doing to ensure best practice. It's also a way to stay within market while keeping up with compliance. Again, we have really gone in the past couple of years, we've gone into using these technology platforms. Obviously, Harri, which the team that you have there with you, Samantha, are amazing with keeping us up to date with everything. If it's a change to the I-9, it's a change, we've just had to take on E-Verify because of the change of the law in Florida. So Harri have been great for that. Then using companies like ADP, updates on wage and hour compliance, and we consider support and up-to-date enhancements when we partner, and we look to add software platforms or applications. The main three we use are Harri, ADP, and then we have our LMS system, which is provided by Wisetail. So that's a great way for us to communicate any changes of compliance out to all of our team members, which, as you know, spread across 2 states, one on either side of the country. So embracing the technology has really worked well for us these past couple of years.
Fantastic. And I guess this could be kind of state specific, or you could talk about maybe a federal requirement, but which of the requirements do you feel have been the most difficult to comply with or understand or communicate to your employees? Ian or Jessica?
I mean, for us, one of the biggest changes recently was the implementation of E-Verify in Florida. That was kind of scary for a lot of our managers to get to grips with. It's a serious subject, and you want to make sure that you're doing it right. That was I'm not going to say difficult, but to get that out to everybody so that they fully understand how to use the system, why we use the system, and what those consequences could be if we don't use it correctly. And I think one of the big helping hands we had there was through Harri, because it's obviously already built into the system. It's something that we use on a day-to-day basis. So that made it a little bit easier. But even now, a few months down the road, we're still learning with it. It's not the most reliable system. Sometimes it can go down quite a lot. So it's, what do we do when that happens to make sure that we are staying in compliance with everything that's required, especially in the state of Florida?
Yeah, absolutely. Jessica, do you feel like there's a requirement that was particularly difficult to comply with?
I think so many of them are difficult to comply with because we're people. And I think Ian brought up a great point. It's like getting our people engaged in it and really understanding what they're doing. And that's scary for them. And you can't blame them. I mean, rolling out E-Verify, I'm sure, Ian, you have stories. I'm sure you have great stories about it. And some people who are like, oh, this is easy. And then some people are like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to do this? Why am I supposed to do this? So there's so much of it that I think has been really challenging, no matter what seat you're in, as these things just happen so quickly and you're thinking that you've planned for all of the mishaps that are going to happen, but you really you did your best. But you definitely step in it, right? So I don't know that I would pick one that is easier or harder than the other. I think they're all difficult, and I think it's the planning. We got to plan as well as we can. Really come in with those eyes wide open, and try to develop our teams in a way that they can handle the tough situations. But I do feel like most of them right now are pretty difficult to implement.
Yeah, I'd agree. How do you ensure that you're kind of in the same vein? I feel like this question kind of goes hand in hand with this, but how do you ensure that you're complying with both and all federal, state, and local requirements? How do you make sure that you're aware of all these requirements and that you're configuring your systems to meet these requirements? Basically, how do you make sure you have an understanding of what you are required to do by law and that your employees also understand what they're required to do?
Well, it's having good partners. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jessica, you're first.
So I was going to say, it's having the good partners, right? You really have to have good partners with all of your technology companies. So like, Harri, we have a great partnership and we call and say like, hey, like this is what we're seeing, talk with us about, how you're looking to do this, really opening those lines of communication, because you're right. Not only is it difficult when you're thinking of state and local, and then federal regulations, because they're also different how they play together, and reading through it and understanding it. And then everyone has a difference of opinion. My joke is that, compliance is like dating. Everybody in your group is going to have a difference of opinion, and that absolutely transcends in this. And so making sure that partnership is there so you can work it out, get your lawyers involved, when you can. If you're a really small organization, use your partners wisely, use those webinars, those anything you can go to that helps you sort of define what it is, and then feel real confident in the decisions that you're making with your platforms to help support you, because there's no way you can do it all by hand anymore.
Totally. No way. Ian, any thoughts?
Yeah, like Jessica said, communication within all of the departments, not just HR, but you're working with finance, with your legal team, having regular scheduled monthly meetings with all management helps translate any compliance risks along with updates to regulatory changes. We like to provide examples on how things can happen, what we do in those events, so like real world scenarios during management meetings. There's part of my job as the training manager as well, is putting out these additional training sessions to managers anytime something new in the compliance world comes up, and giving them examples of, this could be the situation, this is what you would do, how would you react? And it just keeps it in the forefront of their mind all the time.
Totally. Yes, I feel like you can have the greatest software in the world, but at the end of the day, if your employees don't necessarily know how to use it, then it's not going to be effective, right? So you have to have that training in combination with the software to ensure that you are successful at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Okay. So again, I kind of feel like this question goes hands in hand with the last question. What is helping you keep up with the pace and scale of some of these regulations? Are there any trusted sources of truth that you rely on day to day to help you understand some of these changes? Jessica Orion.
I kind of, we have our human resources team within V&E led by Yesenia Rodriguez. She is very, very good at, getting any new information out to us, communicating it out to us. I think the point I'm trying to make is that, there's a team here. It's not just one person trying to make these decisions, and we do it as a collaboration between all the different departments within the company.
Right. Jessica?
Yeah, I would say very similar. We're working on it as a group. There's no way one person can figure all of it out. There's so many things happening, and so I think if everybody is engaged in the process and bringing those items to the table each week, it's super helpful. You may read something in the news, or you may see something on TV, and you're like, "Wait, what are they talking about?" So, being inquisitive, digging in a little, asking those questions, it helps the company stay on top of it.
100%. Which elements of your technology stack would you say have also helped you navigate this?
I feel like all of them. You have to have a really good HRIS system. You have to have a really good time scheduling system. I have Harri. I'm partial. And you've got to have all the systems have to talk to each other. So as integrated as you can get it, the better you're going to be, because you want it to flag you when there's a problem. If your systems are very disjointed, then you get yourself into some hot water sometimes. So I like systems that are very integrated, that have lots of great flags in the system, so when something's not right. Those types of things. You want good systems, and you really want to have good relationships with the companies that you have your systems with. So when you have a problem, or you have a question, or you're not sure how to use something, that you can reach out and say, "Hey, this is a new regulation we're reading about. Are you guys working on this? Do you know about that?" You want that conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Jessica hit the nail on the head there, because one thing you said then about the systems talking to each other, I'm a big fan of automation. You can click a button, and that person has been hired, they've been onboarded, they're in the payroll system. And the systems that we use, obviously Harri, ADP, and Wisetail, all three of them systems talk to each other. So I onboard somebody through Harri, they appear in ADP. Once they've been hired into ADP, they appear in our LMS system. It just creates that seamless journey. And with three big companies there, from Harri, ADP, and Wisetail, any changes in compliance, maybe it's something that we've missed, I can guarantee that one of them three companies will be there to say, "Hey, this is coming up. Do you want to talk about this? Is there something that you want to put in place to make sure that, you're abiding by this compliance?" So I'm a huge fan of technology that talks to other platforms, and automation, and it makes it a lot easier to keep on top, especially when you're working in different states with so many different locations, so many staff members. It just makes the job so much easier.
Yeah, it's a lot of elements to worry about. So having those systems that are interoperable and work together with staff that's willing to communicate compliance updates to you, I think it's also vital to the success of the company. Okay, so we know that often compliance risks do happen on the front line. So how are you translating the compliance requirements to your general managers and staff, and making sure they know what's expected of them?
We do, a lot of meetings between, and now that we love a meeting, that you can do online, so again, you may not be in the same state, but you can all be there together in that meeting, making sure that general managers, executive chefs, restaurant managers, our finance department, lawyers, anything like that, that we're all together and we all understand what's happening. And then that's the way, like I said earlier, I can then build that into a training module. It could be a quick bite training where, it's just a quick read through, or it could be more of a substantial module. And then again, we can assign that through our LMS system to certain positions. So it could just go out to general managers, it could just go out to chefs, it could just go out to the servers, anything like that. And we can pinpoint who that training needs to go to, and then we can track that, make sure they've done the training. We have reporting on that, so we know that then people have been made aware of whatever new compliance is in place. Did they understand it? And are they using that in their day-to-day job? So I think a big thing in there is communication and training to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Totally. Jessica?
I completely agree. The other thing I would say is that breaking it down in bite-sized pieces. One of the things that I continue to find is that we sometimes talk in really big terms, or we use terminology that, those of us that have read the regulation understand, and yet our teams, our frontline, general managers, they don't understand that in the same way, because it's not what they read every day. And so really taking the time to break it down into bite-sized pieces to make sure that they're able to not only implement it, but they understand the why behind it. You got to get the buy-in, and the buy-in comes with explaining why we're doing it. And then, I like 3-5 steps. I like things that are very small. Like, let me give you 5 steps you have to follow. And then it's a lot easier to explain when something goes wrong. You're like, hey, you're missing step 3, or you're missing step 4. And so, really trying to make sure we're breaking it down, giving them the why behind it, and then really, driving those points home, and talking about it every single day until we get it or we figure it out. But it's important. The training is imperative, just like Ian said. Like, we got to train you so that you understand it, and we got to track to make sure you've actually done the training. And then remember, we have to do ongoing training. One of the things I think, I think every one of us have fallen in this pitfall before. It's the fact that the turnover, of course, in hospitality industry is pretty high. So, we think we've trained you. We're expecting that it's happening in the way in which we wanted it to happen. And yet we go out to do something and we're like, well, why is no one doing it this way? Because I know we've trained you, but it's like, well, we've trained you, but maybe we trained you a year ago and there's been a, 40 or 50% turnover. Have we trained you since? And so really owning that space of how we're continuing that development and continuing that expectation, a very important part of it.
Absolutely. And do you feel like it's necessary to repeat some of these trainings more than once a year or every year, or how do you go about that?
Well, where we're concerned, you have your initial new hire training, but like you said, 6 months down the line, things have changed. I'm a big fan of getting people into a room to do training, to present that training, so you can see that the people are engaged with it, to make sure your employees are taking it in and they're reacting to what you're trying to train them in. Unfortunately, that's not always possible. So like with our online training, we can quickly build out a module, in a couple of hours, that covers all the bases, and then that can be sent out. It's it's something I prefer to do in person, but I think the online training aspects of that really helps with that situation. Yeah,
absolutely. I feel like in terms of understanding and comprehension, that an in-person training might be more effective, obviously. But again, I think the accessibility and the ability to continuously communicate out of training is where doing it over the web is a little bit easier. Potentially. Okay, so this kind of goes with the training piece. So how do you ensure that your employees, because again, you can train an employee, but how are you ensuring that they actually understand and adhere to these requirements? Do you do continuous check-ins? I mean, I know, Jessica, you kind of spoke to this in terms of, following up and going step by step, but how do you embrace this and kind of make it scalable?
It's really developing an audit process for things. So if you expect what you inspect, right? So you can't expect that it's going to happen unless you're checking on it. And so I think it's building in those audits, whatever they are, whether it's, an operational audit, an HR audit, whatever it is, build in those audits and those checkpoints on things that are really important. If you build those in and you check on them regularly, whether it's, quarterly, or it doesn't need to be every day, but how are you checking to make sure that that all these things that you're developing your people to do, or that you say are important, are really happening, and then making changes as you audit. So it's like, okay, so I've audited, it seems like this is going well. Like, what are the new, the new points that we need to add to this audit as well, or maybe now it's not as important and we can take it away.
Right.
But a great example, we're talking about E-Verify. So if it was E-Verify, it needs to go on the, it's got to go on the list of like, we got to check on this regularly as part of, somebody's audit. And then the follow-up, make sure it's happening and that everything's working right. And so many times people don't tell us when it doesn't work right. They're like, well, I tried it. And you're like, what happened?
Right.
Like, oh, well, it doesn't, XYZ doesn't work. And you're going, gosh, if you told me, I actually have a fix for that. So, that audit process is really, I think, a very important piece to the bigger puzzle.
Totally. Ian, do you have any thoughts to add?
Yeah, I think I look at things very much from an operational point of view, because that's where my background is. So we have our team of restaurant managers, our general managers, our chefs, and they, like Jessica said, they're constantly auditing our staff, as an example, making sure that steps of service are being followed, making sure that the correct policies and procedures, that they're using the POS system correctly. They will then, feed back to me. It used to be a case of, oh, they're doing it wrong, discipline. Whereas now we're trying to foster an environment where, let's not look for what's being done incorrectly. Let's look at it as a opportunity to improve that team member. So if the manager is seeing something that, say, a bartender isn't doing correctly, rather than just writing that person up, we need to look at, is this a training need? Has something changed? Has a procedure changed? We need to do a retrain. So then we will look into that at maybe, every 6 months, where we can send out the online training, or if it warrants, we can get each brand together, our different restaurant brands, bring them in, do a whole retrain if it's something that's come from, a state or federal side, or whether it's just a company policy that we're changing. So I think it's the auditing side, but having your boots on the ground, the managers there, making sure that everything's running smoothly, and then identifying any needs and any training needs that we need to implement.
Yeah, absolutely. So often when we talk about compliance, we're talking about risk. What have been your biggest wins when communicating these changes to your frontline, in terms of maybe avoiding a risky situation, or feeling like your employees really were able to comprehend and understand the severity of maybe potentially not staying in compliance? Jessica or Ian?
I think with ours, I would say our biggest win so far would have been the E-Verify. It came very quickly in Florida. And with the assistance of you guys at Harri, to have that implemented into our ATS system already, with the training built in, I think, even though there was a few shaky bits around at the beginning, some people weren't really sure, but before you can even do one, you have to go through that training system that's presented through Harri, and now for the most part, it runs very, very smoothly. The majority of our staff are very adept in how to operate it. So I think that was one of the big wins for us, and it is, it was one of the most important that we had to get right to make sure that we were complying with the state law.
Jessica?
Gosh, there's so many things. I think, it's interesting for me. I look at some of the compliance things that we're all faced with today. And I think some of the biggest wins is really having the staff that's coming to work that's excited to be there and providing great steps of service. Like, if they do that every day, so many of the compliance pieces become easier. And,
Yeah.
it's, clocking in and out. And we were laughing about this a couple of weeks ago on a call where, I was saying, like, someone said to me, I have to clock in every day. I have to clock out every day. And I'm like, it's a basic job responsibility.
Yeah.
It was sort of funny. It was a funny thing. It's like, clocking in and out has been happening for, I don't know, my whole life, and I'm not going to give my age,
Yeah.
right? So this is not something that's new. And so the biggest wins sometimes are so like it for me is like, okay, everybody's like, oh yeah, this is not hard. Here using Harri to clock in and out is an easy. Oh my gosh, that's a win. Like it's a win. If I can get you to clock in every single day and I get you to clock out every day and take your lunch at the right time, and my leadership now understands how to use the system in it's an easier system to use. It's easy to function. Right. They can make their corrections in where they need to. They can put their notes in the system, and we process payroll timely. A win. Okay, that's a win. And so I look at that as how, we're getting better and better over time because we're using those amazing tools to really help us meet all of the requirements that we're receiving. But in addition to that, we're also able to, celebrate that small win of like, it's just easy. Let's just make it easy. So it becomes like a non-thing, right? So
yes,
that's how I see it.
Absolutely. And California being the complex compliance beast that it is, I would hope that the integrative compliance within the Harri platform would help make the clock in, clock out, take your breaks when you're supposed to process a little bit easier for both the employees and the manager. So
absolutely. So, and I think back 2 years ago where every time you had to make a correction, you had to have a piece of paper that both parties had to sign. Do you know how much paper that is? And I'm sure people on the call know how much paper because they're like, yeah, I have a drawer. Yeah, I mean, we had paper for every single piece, every single time we had to make a correction. And so looking at it today where it's like, gosh, it sends the employee a little message and they can tell you what they need to tell you. It just makes our lives so much easier. So simple, like it's not a simple thing when it was built, but it's a very simple thing today where you go, gosh, this saves me hours of time and hours of items that I now don't have to keep anymore. I don't have to have drawers of sign-offs, things like that, like low-hanging fruit. Like if we can, no matter what the compliance issue is, if you can clean it up, the low-hanging fruit ones, get those off your plate, your life just is better and your employee's life is better.
Absolutely. I think the use of, not to push Harri for a little, but I think the use of the Team Live platform for both the employee and the employer in terms of signing off when there's a schedule change or being able to see any adjustments to your time card. I think it just makes the process of reporting and auditing and understanding compliance so much easier for the employee and also for the manager, right? Because everything is built in, it's recorded right there, and that all of that information is very much accessible. So that's my little Harri push. Okay, so, sorry, go ahead, Jessica.
I was going to say, we got to remind ourselves that our employees, they come to work to have a great experience at work and to get paid. And so the more, the more we can have fun at work and they get paid, the better we're going to do overall, because our employees are going to love to come and work hard and hang out with their guests and have great conversations and really not worry about things that they need, which is they do need that paycheck at the end of the week or however many times they get paid.
100%. Yeah, let's make the process easy for them to come to work and easy for them to leave at the end of the day so that they can focus on just doing their job when they show up and not have to deal with any of the paperwork that you were speaking about earlier. Okay, so this kind of goes in hand with making sure the employees enjoy their experience when they come to work. So we are all aware that there is a high turnover rate in hospitality. Do you think the mandatory compliance requirements are going to help burnout and the overall perception of hospitality work? I'll let either of you choose if you want to go first.
Go on, Jessica, you can go.
This is a tough question for me because I will say that this is a tough question because here's the deal. Like there's been regulations that have been in effect for well over 20 years and we don't do those well as an industry. So making it mandatory, I don't know that it's gonna, in my opinion, I don't know that it helps anything or hurts anything. I think it's gonna be the same challenges we're faced with today we'll be faced with tomorrow. I don't see it better or worse. I see it very much the same.
I mean, to be candid, some compliance requirements are just kind of annoying. I don't think they're necessarily super helpful for anyone. They're just annoying to have to deal with. I think a lot of them are very well intentioned, but then in practicality, they're just annoying. That's my own personal
that's what I would agree there. They're in practicality, they sound good, but then in the real world, annoying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you feel about the overall perception of hospitality work through the lens of some of these compliance requirements, though? Do you think that it's going to kind of, again, we know it's well intentioned, but do you think employees are going to be drawn to hospitality work because of the compliance requirements? Do you think it has any effect on it? No.
No.
That's fair.
I think if you love, I think if you love hospitality and you love guests and you love, like, you just love it. That's just, I don't think it has anything to, I don't think the two play together. I think it's like what you love and what you enjoy, you know, and so when you get out onto that, you know, when you get into the restaurant on the floor and you're helping a guest and you're excited to be able to serve them amazing food, like that's what you enjoy. And I don't think it, in my, like I said, my opinion, personal, I don't think it has to do with the other.
Yeah, I don't think, you know, if the state of California was to say all of a sudden a meal break is going to go from 30 minutes to 40 minutes, that was all of a sudden going to draw a bunch of employees to come work in hospitality. I just don't think, again, not that that's a compliance requirement, but again, just for example, I just, sometimes these laws, I'm like, I just don't see this as kind of bringing more employees into hospitality. But again, my own personal opinion.
No, I think what draws people to hospitality is like you said, it's something in that person, likes dealing with people, likes making people enjoy whatever it is they do, whether it's a vacation, whether it's a restaurant meal, a drink in a bar. I think it's got to be something that's within that person. It's something you have inside you, rather than, oh, I'm going to get a 40-minute meal break. You know, it's right. I think it goes a lot deeper than that.
Right. They're passionate about serving people, about cuisine, about, you know, service. Again, it's not the compliance requirement bringing them in. It's a passion for work. So let's kind of switch gears. I just got a reminder from one of our presenters that if you are on this webinar, you can go ahead and submit questions if you would like to. There is a Q&A chat on the side of the screen. So if you do have a question and you would like to ask one of our presenters, feel free to enter the question into the chat. So back to our questions. How do you think leadership within your business can foster a positive compliance culture?
I think leading by example, especially, you know, to demonstrate a strong commitment to compliance in the leader's actions and decisions, you know, because your behavior sets the tone for the entire organization, you know, and managers are likely to follow suit if they see you taking compliance seriously. So I think that's the number one part. And then I'm a big advocate for, you know, for training and education. You can't operate something if you don't understand the why and the how that we're going to do something. So ensuring that that training and education is in there, and then making sure everything's clear, your policies, your procedures, making sure it's presented out in a clear and understandable way. And, you know, you'll be able to get that information across to your employees, to your team, and they'll be able to follow suit with that.
Yes. 100%. Jessica?
I totally agree with that. It's all about that modeling, right? You want your leadership to model what you expect from everybody else. So you got to keep it concise and clear, and they have to understand the why, all of that. If any of those pieces are missing, you find that all of a sudden it starts to fall apart. So
absolutely,
you got to model it well.
Totally. Given your experience, both of your experience in this space, and again, I feel nationally, given the push for Fair Work Week in a lot of jurisdictions, Where do you feel compliance requirements are headed? Do you think that we're going to see more Fair Work Week rules popping up in other jurisdictions, maybe in California? In California, I know we have, obviously we have San Francisco, we have Los Angeles, San Jose, Emeryville, Berkeley, like the list is growing, right? Do you feel like that push is going to continue to expand? And if so, how do you feel about it? What is your feeling about that, Jessica?
Yes, I think it's going to continue to expand. I don't see it slowing down anytime soon. I think we're going to continue to see that. We're going to continue to see a lot of push there. It will not surprise me to have something that comes out that says that it's a month in advance. Like you need it a month. It's got to be scheduled. It's got to be like it won't surprise me at all. I think you have enough push in all of the cities that you're gonna see it from a state perspective soon enough.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm curious. I feel like the state of California, they continue to push higher level compliance requirements. I think like the list of compliance requirements in California just continues to grow. And so as we've seen more Fair Work Week jurisdictions pop up, I think eventually it's going to be one of those things where every county you go to is going to have a Fair Work Week jurisdiction. And that's a lot for a business operating across California. I mean, to comply with all those different Fair Work Week requirements, and because they're not all the same, right? It's not like there's one set of Fair Work Week requirements and those apply to all of the applicable jurisdictions. They're all different based on the needs of that specific jurisdiction. So how do you feel? Does that necessarily make you nervous, or how would you go about approaching that with your staff and trying to kind of explain to them what Fair Work Week is, how to approach it with Harri maybe? I mean, how do you feel about that?
Absolutely. I continue to look at, there's a lot of different regulations like this that I feel like continue to get pushed to the limit. And then you have so many competing areas. So you're trying to figure out what's the best way. Typically the way I look at it is like, what is the most severe or aggressive county, and then if we went to that one and looked at exactly what their guidelines are, could we push everyone else into it, and would it work? I mean, because it does get so complex. You really hit the nail on the head when you said it just gets really complex to manage. It does. If you operate, let's just say we operate in 5 different cities, and in those 5 different cities, every single one of them has a different requirement. It is completely challenging. And then the other piece to that is you have employees that work in both. Right. Because, let's say on a hard day, somebody's out on leave, or somebody, we know all the things that happen, right? And it's like, oh, I'm going to borrow somebody because the restaurants are literally 7 miles apart. Now you borrow somebody from restaurant A to restaurant B, and there's different weekly requirements. So the complexities of it, I think, are going to continue to get more and more challenging. And so the way that I, would really try to do it is I want to break it down and make it as simple as possible for the team. And that actually might be, what is the most severe? Let's see, if we did the most severe, does every single county actually fall into that and make it okay? And if that was the case, then, maybe going this direction. I don't know what we would do, to be fair, but like that is sort of how we have looked at other things and other situations that have occurred, because we saw that. I mean, to be fair, I'm going to say a bad word right now, COVID, we saw that in COVID in California. Every single county had a different regulation on how to handle it. And it was challenging. And I'm sure many people on this call know how challenging it was, because you're like, what county am I in? And you're trying to remember, and you have spreadsheets and grids. And I mean, so it's sort of at that same level that we're seeing a lot of things, whether it's leaves, whether it's sick pay, whether it's sick time, whether it's scheduling, like there is a lot of things that are all headed sort of that direction. So it's a real challenge here in California.
I mean, even just minimum wage. The minimum wage varies in California across cities. So again, it's like, if you're scheduling an employee in one city versus another, it's, it's a lot. It's a lot to manage, like you said.
And even the most advanced.
Sorry, go ahead, Jessica.
I was just going to say, even the most advanced system is going to struggle with that level of complexity.
Yeah.
Like,
it is complex.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I think for us, where Fair Work Week laws are concerned, from my perspective, being in Nevada, more specifically in Las Vegas, we kind of do this already because of the Culinary and Bartenders Union. So, they're very specific on, hourly pay, on sick pay, on PTO, all of that goes into it. When I've looked through these Fair Work Week laws and seen, I'm like, yeah, we kind of do that already. We do that already. We do that already. How that goes off then, if that kind of thing was to grow into Florida, then, that would be a different matter, and that would be something that we would need to look into. But I think from a Nevada point of view, we've kind of been doing this for a long time now. Very, very similar to these Fair Work Week laws are already in place.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great way to think about it. So we have finished the Harri questions. So we're actually going to move over into some of our webinar attendees' questions that they have submitted. So I will read the first question. I've always managed my schedules manually and have never had a compliance issue. What is the benefit of using technology when so far I've been fine doing it by myself? Jessica or Ian, I'll let you speak to that. Considering you both use Harri.
I'm going to be honest with you. We don't use Harri for scheduling. Sorry, but I'm a big fan of technology. Yes, it can be quite easy to put your schedule together, but you're putting it into an Excel and then you've got to get it out and post it on the wall. I think technology, especially for scheduling, it's time efficiency. It streamlines the whole process, reduces the time and effort to create schedules. You can get them, so there's automated scheduling software. It can generate your schedule based off employee availability, workload requirements. Accurate. I've done schedules in the past where I've put somebody to close and then mistakenly put them to open, and they've come in and we've had to pay them that overtime. So I think that they have these processes built in to prevent you from putting people onto extra shifts when they shouldn't be. They're very flexible. You can do shift swaps and
right.
The part-time schedules, you can ensure, and they bring in the compliance with labor laws and company policies, and then I think cost as well. Cost has to come into it. These they do save time and money, and they can get your information out to your team in an instant. So the communication side of it as well. That's my thoughts. I'm a very big fan of software and automated procedures that we can put in place.
I totally agree. I am all for making it electronic. We do use Harri, and it is a time saver. First of all, you're not sitting there writing a schedule. It's not paper. It's easily, it's there. It's online. It's accessible. Employees can't complain that they can't see it. It's accessible. It's easy for them to get there. It comes to them in an easy way. And I would challenge somebody that told me that their manually written schedule was accurate, because I could pretty much bank on it. There's a mistake somewhere in it, not because you're not amazing. You might be amazing. I wrote schedules for years. I could rally the best, but I will tell you, even at your best, you will probably make some type of mistake or error on that schedule, which then, translates later if there was ever an issue. So, let's use the resources that we have. We save time, we save money, and we were fair and consistent. The fair and consistency piece of it, when there's a scheduling system that will do it for you, where it's going to take the information that you input, it's going to produce something that makes a lot of sense, that really is reflective of what your business needs. So when is your most traffic coming in? What does those sales look at different hours? How many people you can build all this in, which is amazing, and really have the right schedule to make sure that your guests are taken care of in the right way. So all of those things I think are very important when looking at scheduling, and making sure that you're building it right.
Right. And I think with the integrated compliance component with Harri, for example, it kind of puts guardrails up on the schedule, right? And it shows you when overtime is being triggered, when reporting time pay is being triggered, when there's a split shift premium. And then again, if you're in a fair work week jurisdiction, obviously it will tell you when premiums are owed for, again, an addition of hours violation, for example. Right. So it just makes the process a little bit more seamless, like you said, easier to understand, And then again, it's much easier to communicate out to your employees because you don't have to do anything on paper. And again, like you said, I have a hard time imagining a paper schedule is accurate when put up against in competition with a platform like Harri. But
yeah, for sure.
Agreed.
Okay. So the next question that we have submitted is, my managers don't take compliance as seriously as I do, and I find myself checking over schedules, documents to make sure it's all fine. How can I ensure they take it seriously?
I think we touched on this earlier with the, fostering a positive compliance culture. We said, about leading by example, training, education, making sure your policies and your procedures are clear. I think Jessica mentioned earlier on as well about regular audits and monitoring. But then also, I think, accountability and consequences. There needs, there needs to be accountability in our positions. So, making sure that you're going through them steps of, training, being the leader, auditing and monitoring. If they are consistently failing there, then that's when the accountability comes in. But then also making sure that there's open channels of communication. Maybe they just don't understand it, and making sure that they feel comfortable enough to come to you and be like, hey, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing here. Can you explain it again? And then, recognize and reward managers who consistently uphold compliance standards. I think is another a good way of getting them to take it a little bit more seriously.
Totally agree. Jessica?
Yeah, this is always going to be a challenge, and I think Ian said it really well. We got to hold the standard, hold accountability, but we also need to understand why they don't understand. My guess is they're not doing it because they don't understand. Scheduling, paying team members, those are two of the areas that I think most leaders are the most challenged with. There's a level of gray, at least in California, that is very difficult to navigate. And so making sure we're really spending the time so that they understand the material, understand exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And if they don't, that they're not afraid to ask. I think, if we come too quick with the discipline, then they become afraid to ask. So we want to come from that caring coaching place first and really make sure coach, train. And then obviously if it still doesn't happen, then absolutely we got to move to something else. But I just feel like it's a very difficult area and there is a lot of gray, which is why our court system is so full, right? So, we got to remind ourselves that there's a ton of gray. And so helping them to really navigate this is going to be, is really a big part of our jobs.
Right. Creating an environment where employees are not scared to ask questions and they want to understand and they want to feel like they'll be rewarded for understanding, I think is great. Okay, next question. So how much do you have to anticipate possible compliance changes and pay attention to the political landscape? Are you constantly monitoring the legislative and regulatory worlds, or do you save resources and pounce on new ones once the rules take effect?
I wouldn't say I'm constantly, monitoring it. I have other things to do, but we have we sign up for email newsletters, from Miami Beach, from the local government side, from around in Las Vegas, in Nevada. So we get those that appear in our inbox, but then Google is sometimes your best friend. You can type in there and see what's happening and search for things that anything you're not sure of. And then from my point of view as well, we are an independent restaurant company, but we are inside, some of the big names like Caesars Entertainment, and they have a fantastic human resources team that we work alongside with. And again, like I mentioned earlier, with the side of the Culinary and Bartenders Union, things are changing there all the time as well. So it's good to collaborate with them as well. And then, the regular, from SHRM and things like that, just what you're reading or seeing on the news as well. But I try to keep up as much as possible.
Yeah, Absolutely. There are a ton of great resources out there, and I do think Google can be your best friend. Jessica?
Yeah, I mean, you can make yourself crazy with the amount of changes. It
Yeah.
almost feels like whiplash sometimes, because
Yeah.
every time you think you know that something's going to happen, it comes out a little more, it comes different. It's nuanced.
Right.
So yes, I think all of the things that have already been mentioned, absolutely 100% agree with, and definitely take your cues from other things that are happening. So if you're seeing something locally, I feel like it's the local ones that usually catch us off guard, because it's not, you're not prepared for it, and they don't come in at a, there's certain times of year where your states and your federal type regulations come, you see the majority of them, not all of them, but the majority. And so you're sort of prepared for that. It's your local ordinances that'll take you by surprise, and you go, wait, what happened yesterday? And I didn't know. So that's, sort of staying on top of that. And if you see it on the local news, dig in, don't wait, because sometimes they make them, it's today it starts, and you're like, wait, what am I doing? What happened today that I didn't know about, that I need to, change direction on? And so, yeah, it's not easy to stay on top of it. Don't beat yourself up if you miss something, but clean it up as fast as possible. And I think, hopefully everybody has a lawyer. Even the smallest organization should at least have somebody that they can call, that's their, their go-to person. Usually they're really good, they're a really good person to bounce it off. Hey, I heard this on the news, or I read this on Google, or I read this on blah, blah, blah. Does this seem right to you? Is this really what I should be thinking through? Run it past them. They're your good sort of sounding board. But yeah,
absolutely.
It's a little crazy.
Like you said, a lot of the local things happen at the city council, right? And there's not much news press for a local city council. And so it is hard. And sometimes it's even hard to find the ordinances that are passed. For example, our team was searching for, I believe it was the Berkeley ordinance, and we were really struggling to find it online, because again, there was news that it had been posted, but it hadn't been published by the local city council. So that's, again, but there wasn't a ton of press about it throughout the state of California, because it only affected Berkeley. So like you said, it is hard to stay on top of a lot of these things that are happening at the local level, versus a lot of things that do happen at the state and the federal level. There's a lot more news press about it. So it's managing that. And again, not beating yourself up when maybe you don't when you're not right on top of something when it does, come to pass and everything.
Yeah, some of these sneak in, and then just making sure when they do sneak in, you go to the reputable source, especially with especially with the city ordinances, because those will, they're going to get, when they do get reported, they may not report everything, and so it really is important to go to that city and look through that document to make sure you actually follow what it says versus what you read in the, and I'm going to say newspaper loosely, but you get my point.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this is actually our final question of the webinar today. So before we finish, I would like to say, Jessica and Ian, thank you so much for joining us today. Our final question is, can you give our listeners some advice about how they can get a better handle on compliance in their own restaurant operations? Jessica, I'll start with you.
Okay, so I guess my last advice would just be, expect what you inspect. So don't have them do something that you're not going to check on, because if you're not going to check on it, it's not going to get done. Make sure you spend the time to tell them the why. That is so important, and really does change the landscape when you give the why. And make it bite-sized pieces. Don't give them something that's so like there's 900 different things that they have to hit. They'll get tired after the first couple. And pictures are worth 1,000 words. So if you can put a picture with a clear statement, you're gonna go farther. So those would be my little takeaways.
Great advice. Ian?
Yeah, I think very, very similar to Jessica, making sure it's clear that the information is clear, the policies, the procedures, making sure they understand, and making sure that it's bite-sized training or bite-sized bits of information. I think it's much easier for people to absorb that, understand it, and run with it. And then, of course, monitor it. Auditing it and monitoring it, making sure, like Jessica said, that it gets done.
Yes, absolutely. Fabulous advice as well. With that, again, thank you, Ian and Jessica. I appreciate you both being here and what you've shared. I will hand it back to Alan.
Thank you, Samantha. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Jessica. So our work is done here, folks. But before we go, please let me thank today's presenters, Samantha Gallagher of Harri, Ian Dyer of B-Dot Estilo Hospitality Group, V&E, if you go by that, and Jessica Napier of Pacific Catch. Harri, of course, gets a big thank you for the sponsorship and content contributions that made this program possible. And you, our audience, gets a final thanks for your time and attention. Quick reminder, when it arrives in email, please share this replay link with interested associates. We think you'll thank you for that. And please do join us for future NRN webinars. Also, if you have not done so, before you leave, please check out the resources area of your webinar console to find some relevant downloadable documents or links. And with all that, all of us here would like to bid you good day and goodbye.